Welcome, everybody. It's Thursday, March 23rd. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, your daily show about the latest news from Ukraine. Before we get going, let's get the YouTubers. You're the YouTubers, the TikTokers joining us. And as always, we'll wait about 2 or 3 minutes for folks to arrive. So let's do that too. Hang on here, mirror my image. There we go. Introduce yourselves while we're waiting. But we always wait about 3 minutes or so because it takes a little bit of time for the announcement to go out and then for folks to arrive on YouTube and TikTok and all of that. So introduce yourselves if you would. It is 82. It's not 82. Did it get up to 82? You're supposed to get up to like 77 today. 78, it says. It might have gotten up to 82. Wow. It is incredibly warm in DC today. Like wonderfully warm. So I'm very happy about that. So yay. So took a nice leisurely walk with my dog. Ooh, no nap today, so I'm probably going to yawn at you all, but that's life. Anyway, so yes, let's wait another 2 minutes or so for folks to arrive. Hey, Big Hawk. And then we get rolling. Boy. Cologne, Nebraska, Australia. Hola, user. Oh, I know I'm yawning. I kind of yawned. I shouldn't yawn today, but I didn't have a nap, so a little more yawny today. Oh my. Ooh, but decent amount. Actually, interesting news today. Not a ton of news today, but interesting news today. So there we go. But yeah, so let's wait another minute and then we will get rolling, folks. All right. Oh, that's interesting. No. Very interesting. Oops, sorry. There we go. Touching stuff on TikTok. Oh, all right, guys. 30 seconds and we'll get rolling. In case you're joining us right now, we always wait about 3 minutes for folks to arrive from TikTok and YouTube. So that's what we're doing at the moment. I'm drinking it's so warm and I'm drinking too much water. I may have to take another water break and fill my water glass. All right, guys, let's get rolling. So welcome. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report, my nightly show, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., talking about the latest news from Ukraine. I am coming to you live from Washington, D.C. The way the show works, first half hour or so, I talk about the latest news, try to give you guys my take on what stories matter, what I think is going on behind the scenes based on my 30-plus years experience working on foreign policy, politics, and media. And then the second half of the show, we take your questions. So to submit questions on TikTok, you guys can use the Q&A link that is in my profile. That's how you submit questions. And for you all over here on my laptop, for YouTube and the rest of you, you can just use the comment box at the bottom. I very much welcome your gifts, whether they're super chat questions with you guys or just or like the rose in my mouth there from Donkey Shane on TikTok, because I do this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out, and you help me pay my bills and keep doing this by supporting me with the gifts. So thank you for that. Actually, you know what? You just reminded me. I've got iced tea in the fridge. One moment. I'm grabbing my iced tea. I realized as I'm yawning, a little bit of my iced tea. Oh, yes. There we go. All right. Much happier now. There we go. I'm much happier now. Now I've got a small little jolt of caffeine. Lovely. There we go. I was thirsty, but I also needed just a little kick of caffeine, I can tell. So anyway, that's the way the show works. So thank you for the gifts. Thank you. Who was that? Mishka for the groundhog. And make sure I didn't miss anybody. Carmel and Sandra for the rose. All right, let's get rolling then. So that's the way the show works. Thank you, Carlos, for your gift there. And let me get rolling. So the big news today, which is really interesting. And the funny part is I haven't seen it discussed very much on the news. What I mean is they're reporting this as a simple story. Basically, Ron DeSantis flip-flopped on Ukraine again, but this is really good. No, I mean, I'm not saying this to like knock the guy. This is really good what he did today. So DeSantis is a Republican governor of Florida. He is one of the top Republican presidential candidates, even though he's not officially running for president. He hasn't announced yet. In the US, there's all sorts of crazy financial rules involved when you announce you're president, or you're running for president. So there's a lot of tactical reasons why he hasn't announced, but he's running for president. Okay. He is considered right now the big competitor of Donald Trump. Okay. And Trump has been going after him pretty hard. Well, DeSantis recently, a couple of weeks ago, went on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News. You all know what Fox News is. Tucker Carlson is the top personality on Fox News. He is very much anti-Ukraine, very much pro-Putin. We don't quite know why. It's very weird, whatever's going on with Tucker Carlson, but very pro-Putin, very anti-Ukraine. DeSantis goes on Tucker's show and says, what we're doing in Ukraine, we shouldn't really be involved. It's a territorial dispute. Of course, Ukraine is not a territorial dispute. They're not fighting. I mean, it's a territorial dispute in the sense that Putin thinks Ukraine doesn't have the right to exist, and he wants Ukraine to be part of Russia. He wants to invade, take over the whole country, wipe it out, and then just make Ukraine Russia. So yeah, it's a territorial dispute in the sense that Putin wants all of Ukraine's territory, but it's not like they're having a border skirmish and they're disagreeing about a border or something, right? So he says it's a territorial dispute, and and it's not an American, and it's not a vital interest of the United States what's going on over there. Well, a lot of Republicans, interestingly, got upset with him. The ones that we saw publicly, thank you, Ali, for the mustache and hat. The ones that we saw publicly, another sip of tea here, were some key Republicans in the House of Representatives, which is great, and key U.S. senators, which is also great, Republicans. Thank you, L, for the hearts. And they hit DeSantis pretty hard. A number of his competitors, what's-her-face, Nikki Haley, Pompeo, some of the others, I think wrote some op-eds and other things basically attacking him and saying, he's giving up on America, whatever. It was great. Well, bottom line is DeSantis now, today or last night, I think it was, goes on Piers Morgan's show, another guy we don't like, but doesn't really matter, goes on Piers Morgan's show and says that his words were taken out of context or misunderstood last week. Putin is a war criminal. He should be arrested. The invasion was wrong and illegal. Ukraine should get all of its land back, including Crimea, which was amazing. And then he paraphrased John McCain's quote, where he referred to Russia as little more than a gas station with nukes. This is a quote that was made famous by American Senator Republican John McCain, who said just that about Russia once. He said, they're little more than a gas station with nukes, basically saying that the country doesn't have anything going for it other than it's got a lot of gas, natural gas and diesel fuel. That's it. That's it. I mean, they've got nuclear weapons, but otherwise they've got nothing. So why is this interesting? Obviously, on its face, if you're pro-Ukraine, it is important to have a leading Republican presidential candidate be pro-Ukraine and by the way, super anti-Russia. I mean, the more anti-Russia that a Republican, for example, or a Democrat, whatever, is going to be, the greater the chance they're going to support Ukraine, but also the greater the chance they're not going to drop their support of Ukraine, right? The idea here is, right, that the more you are concerned about Russia, the country itself and its leadership, the more you're not going to want them to have a victory in Europe, okay? So, but let's look at this writ large. This is much more important than just one guy. Based on my background in politics, DeSantis got the bejesus beaten out of him, okay, by Republicans. It is possible that he heard from Republican voters. I hope he did. It is, I think, a guarantee that he heard from Republican donors, basically, the men and women, but mostly men with money who make or break your campaign. I think a lot of them weighed in privately with him and said, you're out of your mind. This goes against everything our party stands for, Ronald Reagan, et cetera. And we do know that a number of senators and House members, as I said, Republicans, weighed in publicly and criticized DeSantis. And that matters because one of the ways that presidential candidates get momentum is they get other top, not just Republicans, Democratic candidates too. You want other members of your party to come out and support you. So you want other senators and other House members to come out and say, I support Ron DeSantis' run for president, right? Thank you for the rose there, El. And my suspicion is a lot of them told him, there is no way in hell we're going to support you for president, and we're actually going to come out and attack you if you keep this position. But bottom line is, DeSantis flips pretty much 180 degrees in the last week. Keep in mind that DeSantis was a super hawk on Ukraine back in 2015. When Obama was president, DeSantis gave an interview. I mean, I watched it. You can Google it and find it. He gave an interview talking about Ukraine. Putin had invaded the year before, right? Remember 2014, the Russians invaded and stole Crimea, the Ukrainian territory in the south here, and claimed it's now Russia. And they still claim it. It's illegal. Nobody agrees. But nonetheless, they did that. Obama didn't do much, which is not good. And DeSantis was a member of the House at that point, U.S. House of Representatives. And he criticized Obama publicly and said Obama's weak. We should be giving, mind you, listen to what DeSantis said in 2015. We should be giving weapons to Ukraine. We should be helping them beat Russia. We should, then he invoked Ronald Reagan, and he talked about what Reagan did during the Cold War with Russia in the 1980s, and how Reagan stood up to Russia, how evil Russia was. So I don't know what the real DeSantis is here. I don't particularly care either, to be honest. One of the sort of things I always say in politics is, okay, yeah, to a degree, I care if you're just a BSer in politics, meaning politicians who just say one thing and say another. Yeah, I don't like that. But as long as you're saying and doing the right thing, I don't particularly care if you believe it or not. So as long as Ron DeSantis, who is a lead Republican today in the party, I mean, he's a big voice in the party. He could be their candidate. As long as now he's realized that he better, to get elected president, he'd better support Ukraine and attack Russia. That's great. It's great for Ukraine, but also, and this is the final point I'll make about this, I think it's a very interesting observation as to where the Republican Party is right now. Because keep in mind, we were very worried about, and I still am, about the MAGA Republicans basically being akin to the far left. And I mean the far left, where they don't want America to get involved abroad. You know, they basically kind of saddle up to America's enemies, you know, whether they be Russia or whoever. The MAGA crowd's bad about this. And we were concerned, still are, that they're having too much of a voice because of Trump, basically, right? Trump is pro-Putin and hates Ukraine. That they were having too much influence with Fox News and everything else. This says that maybe in the Republican Party, there is still such a significant voice of reason on foreign policy. Thank you for the rose there, Hazel, that being pro-Putin and anti-Ukraine isn't going to fly. So anyway, like I said, this is, I'm not naive, but this gives me hope. This is very important. It's super important for Ukraine. Thank you for the hat there, the mariachi hat there. It's super important for Ukraine. Let me just see. Sorry, who was it? It went flying by, the mariachi hat. I was going to thank you by name, and it went flying off my screen. Mariachi, ¿dónde estás? Okay, mariachi. I can't find. Oh, there you are, Pesci. Sorry, Pesci. I wanted to thank you by name. Thank you for that. So I think this is good. I think this is very good. As I said, really interesting for what it says about the Republican Party and where they are right now in terms of Ukraine, because the pro-Ukraine, anti-Russia contingent is much stronger than we realized, and that's great. Thank you, Andrew, for the duck. Let's go on. So European Union leaders have endorsed a plan to jointly procure, Aflac for the duck, exactly, to jointly procure 1 million rounds of artillery ammunition for Ukraine over the next year, according to the Associated Press. The plan to ramp up the supply of shells to Ukraine was approved by EU foreign and defense ministers earlier this week and has today been signed off by the bloc's 27 member states. So that's good. Slovakia today transferred 4 of the 13 MiG-29 fighter jets it has pledged to Ukraine. So that's nice. I was actually hearing today about this, that even though it's not like a ton of fighter jets are being given to Ukraine, who's giving me that? Thank you for the, it was a speedboat. Oh, Hazel. Thank you, Hazel, for the speedboat on TikTok. Even though we're not giving any from the US, but even though it's not like a ton of fighter jets are going to Ukraine. Thank you, Louis. The jets that are coming could actually, I was listening to this yesterday from one of the defense experts. The jets that are coming could still be very significant in individual battles. So in other words, it's not like there's a ton of jets that can make a difference in the war, like across the board, but in very specific key battles, they could concentrate the jets that they're getting there, and that could make a big difference. So that's great news. Ukraine has submitted a request for trilateral negotiations between Kyiv, Washington, and Helsinki, Finland, to discuss the transfer of FA-18 Hornet fighter jets from Finland. Now, again, don't know where any of that's going to go. One thing that worries me a little bit is the more, I was going to say the more different. I'm trying to find my English here. You want to be careful how many different kind of weapon systems you're giving Ukraine, because it gets complicated. This is the issue with the tanks, and it's also the issue with fighter jets. Every different fighter jet, every different tank takes different training, right? That's the first problem there. Thank you, Richard, for that. You got to get different training. You've got to get different maintenance, which is part of the training. You've got to get, how to run it is like how to steer it and use it is the one training. The second is how to keep it up. You've got to have the spare parts. But again, a different fighter jet, like let's say you've got the French Mirage, you've got, American F-16s, you've got MiGs, you've got whatever. Each one takes different parts, spare parts to fix it. So you need spare parts for all the different kinds of planes you've got, rather than having one kind of plane and everything's interchangeable, right? So that's just something to keep in mind when we keep hearing like now they might get, F-18 Hornets from Finland. I mean, that's great, but it's one more different kind of weapon system for them to learn and to keep up. That's the only thing. But still, better for them to get it than not get it at all. Finland has also pledged 3 more Leopard 2 tanks from its arsenal to Ukraine, bringing the total to 6. And Spain's Leopard tanks, the ones it promised, should be arriving soon. Let's see. Spain's ministry reported today that it would transfer the first 6 of 10 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine by the end of next week. So that's good. And my suspicion with the tanks is the same thing. Even though Ukraine really needs several hundred tanks, at least several of these tanks in one battle could hopefully still be significant. And there's the Bradley fighting vehicles, which I don't have an update on that, but that's something that General Hertling, former American general who I really like, who's on CNN a lot, that he talks about. He keeps reminding people and go, don't forget about the Bradleys. Like, you keep worrying about the tanks and how many tanks have or haven't arrived. He says those Bradleys are going to make a huge difference. And I want to say it was like 200 Bradleys or something we're sending. I remember it being a very large number. So that's important too. I'll give you a quick pitch on the Discord auction and then we'll continue. So as you guys know, I do this full time. The way I support myself is with your gifts, quite honestly, on a number of different sort of ways. But I've been doing this full time since the war broke out. Thank you, Doc Hussein, for the rose. Nobody is paying me to do this. You guys pay me, and literally I take your gifts and everything you give me and I pay my bills. So you quite literally have made it possible for me to do this. So thank you all very much. So one of the things we do as well, we have a Discord. Discord is kind of a neat community where you can chat and share ideas and stuff. It's fun. We've got about over 1,600 people in our Discord. Thank you, Lady Golfin. And the Discord's cool too, because one of the things we do is we auction off cool stuff we get from Ukraine. And I take half of the profits and we channel it back into Ukraine. We've bought, Starlink internet before Elon was being evil. We've bought drones. We've done a lot of stuff with this. The other thing is it goes to pay my bills. So I take half of the profits and use it as income because, again, this is my job. Literally what I do, what you're watching, this is my job. I'm doing full time. Thank you, Nancy, for the galaxy. I won't go through everything, but I'll show you really quick. A number of the things that we're auctioning off right now. I've got a couple pieces of the Berlin Wall that I had chipped off personally in 1989 when I was working on an arms control delegation with the United States Senate. And I have lots of proof that it's real, so don't worry. Cool. Azov style bracelet. I won't go through all the details because I tell you guys these every day, but made by the Ukrainian government to honor the soldiers, the 2,000 soldiers that were fighting at the steel plant in Mariupol against the 14,000 Russians. They don't make these anymore. We've got several. I got a whole bunch of different fridge magnets, but it's the fridge magnet honoring the sinking of the Moskva, which is the Russian warship Go F Yourself warship that a couple months later the Ukrainians sank. Well, they make fridge magnets that's a matchbox with matches in it, and it's the denoting the stamp showing the Ukrainian soldier who's flipping off the ship. If you were close enough, you'd see he's flipping off the ship. What else? Oh, some really cool mugs from Ukraine. That's sort of the same thing, honoring that. And then we've got another one out today, really quick, is because Zelensky was wearing it today. If you saw, Zelensky was traveling around today wearing the sweatshirt. We've got Zelensky sweatshirt, and it literally is the sweatshirt he wears. We found the Ukrainian store that sells them. This is mine personally, but we found the Ukrainian store that sells them and bought a number of different sizes, and they're available in the auction as well. So go check out the auction. Well, it's an auction, so it's whatever people are willing to bid. The highest bidder gets it. But it's a lot of fun, and like I said, we've been really enjoying it, actually, because I love trying to find cool stuff in Ukraine to auction off, and it's my taste. So, if you share my taste, like even the Berlin Wall was my own. It wasn't from Ukraine, but my taste in things like that. We've had a lot of fun stuff. So anyway, it's discord.aravosis.com. You can find it via my profile link in TikTok. Anything I talk about during the show like that, my Patreon, my Discord, etc., just go to the link on my my TikTok, click it, and all my links are there. For you guys, aravosis.com will get you there. Okay, let's get back to the show. So, oh God. So Russia today, or not today, actually, I missed this one. A couple days ago, Russia threatened to bomb the International Criminal Court. These people drive me crazy. Hold on, sip of tea and we'll continue. So our good friend Dmitry Medvedev, who we've talked about before, he's former Russian president, considered to be, as the French say, a lot of you Europeans do that, kind of means, he likes his liquor, and he's a total lunatic. What is very strange about this is Medvedev used to be a moderate. He was the guy we were all looking forward to 20 years ago and said, oh my God, Russia may get a normal leader and he's open to the West and blah, blah, blah. He is now a raving lunatic. He threatens nuclear war, I'd say 2 or 3 times a week, literally for the last year. He's been threatening nuclear war. And now he's pissed off that the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. Because remember how they put out the arrest warrant, was it last Friday, I think, already? And this initial, there's going to be others, I guarantee you, but this initial arrest warrant is for the Russian war crimes, where they have been kidnapping Ukrainian children from orphanages or wherever they find them, taking them to Russia, and then putting them up for adoption in Russian families and making them and giving them re-education so they become Russian. Even though, well, there's a number of problems here. First of all, they don't make any effort to even see if these guys have family. If they have relatives, they don't care. It is illegal, which you wouldn't be surprised to hear. You don't just go to war and find a child. I mean, imagine a U.S. soldier like in Iraq or Afghanistan, and he finds a kid and goes, you know what? That kid's cute. I'm taking him home. It's not a puppy, right? Thank you, Hazel, for the champion. You don't do this. You don't go to, I mean, this isn't like, the ancient world or something where we take the women and children and make them ours, right? It's outrageous. So anyway, the Russians have been doing this. It's horrific. And that is why Putin got the arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. Well, the Russians are very upset with this. And Dmitry Medvedev, the ex-president, who is still a top advisor to Putin, is now threatening to bomb The Hague, which is the seat of the International Criminal Court in Holland, in the Netherlands, which is in Western Europe and is a member of NATO, which means if they did that, we would blow the hell out of them. But listen to this quote. Everyone walks under God and missiles. So first of all, who the hell knows what that means? But everyone walks under God and missiles. It's quite possible to envision a scenario. I swear to God, he sounds like somebody else when he talks like this, but I'm not going to go there. It's quite possible to envision a scenario where a Russian ship stationed in the North Sea could strategically strike The Hague courthouse with a hypersonic Onyx cruise missile, he said. He went on to warn the judges of the International Criminal Court to look carefully at the sky. Probably like the only thing I can think of to say for this is, if you're innocent, you usually don't threaten to kill the judges. Now, I will make one final point, because the Russians, mind you, remember, they also threatened nuclear war yesterday as well. And yesterday it was because of the depleted uranium shells that the Brits are giving the Ukrainians to use to make the anti-tank missiles the anti-tank weapons much stronger. basically make them stronger, meaning the metal stronger, so it pierces the tank more easily. And I do see B Smith. Thank you. What the sorry, the B Smith thing threw me off. The depleted uranium. So they're threatening to bomb NATO, basically. If Putin bombs NATO, it's the end of the world. It's not even the end of the world. They lose. They lose. I've told you this repeatedly. We've got nukes. They get nukes. They use nukes. We use nukes. They die. We die. But they know that. They don't want to die. So they're not going to use their nukes because they don't want to die either, right? If they use conventional weapons like they're saying here, oh, we just use a cruise missile and bomb The Hague. Well, it's a NATO country. You bomb The Hague and we're bombing you. And then guess what happens? If all we use is conventional weapons, NATO overpowers Russia. I don't know by how many factors, but Russia loses the war in, a lot of the defense folks tell me Russia loses the war in a week if NATO were to enter the war. So there is, I always say, the people who are more afraid of war with Russia than we are or you are the Russians themselves, because they know if we entered the war, they would lose. Either we all die in a nuclear war, but they know it and they don't want to die, so they're not going to do it, or we would wipe the floor with them in a conventional war, and they know it. So this kind of stuff, I mean, what's sad about this, what's really sad about this kind of stuff is indicative of the, thank you, Paula, for that, is indicative of just how backwards Russia is, really, which I find very sad, really, because when the Soviet Union fell, 1991, Soviet Union sort of dissolved and went away. A lot of the hostage countries like Ukraine, the Baltic states were freed. I had hope for them. I thought, you know what? Russia is finally going to join Europe, maybe, and they didn't. They went back into being a dictatorship, and now they're going back into being just the sort of evil hegemonic force in the world. But they're also just incredibly immature. This is, I said the other day on Twitter, this is like a drunk high school student or something. You know what I mean? Like this comes across like some kid with psychological problems, where it's like, oh yeah, Mrs. So-and-so's kid, he threatened nuclear war again, today. Oh, didn't he do that yesterday? Yeah. No one lets him, no one tell him. There's just something psychologically wrong with these people. And to make the threats when they know they can't follow through, it's not like they're dealing with some neighbor who they can push around and nobody cares. And then it's like, oh, what do you do? Right? They're going to take over their neighbor. They're saying it to us when they know we're more powerful than we are than they are, so that they're never going to do it. It's just, there's something really messed up there. What do you do? Anyway, D, thank you, D, for the flowers. I don't particularly care. I care. I care, but I just think it's sad, if anything, because it just shows how backwards the country is. So Hungarian officials say Budapest will not arrest Putin if he visits. Whatever. Hungary, I've kind of had it with Hungary and Turkey, both at this point, I've kind of had it with. Bloomberg has a really neat story about Prigozhin. So I'm really enjoying the Prigozhin news. This is another example of how this war has just been a disaster for Putin. So initially, the Russians for many years now, I don't know when they started, Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin, he is a Russian oligarch, basically meaning one of the corrupt billionaires. Oh, I'm sorry, wait, B. Smith had a question first, and then we'll do Prigozhin. Sorry about that, B. Bit off topic, but do you think Russia could start World War III because there were reports a few months ago of Putin having certain terminal health problems and he would feel there's nothing to lose? No. And here's the thing. So the question basically is, if Putin is on his deathbed, might he then go to nuclear war because he has nothing to lose? You've got to remember that Putin is in this for his own ego. He's not in it because he himself. And I guess what I mean by this is, it's not like Putin is messianic in the sense of like a religious leader, like a cult leader, right? No, this is what we have to do. And if we don't, I'm going to have to kill everybody, blah, blah, like for God or whatever the hell, right? That's not what's going on with Putin. Thank you, Dankeschön. What's going on with Putin is he sees himself as another Peter the Great. He sees himself as one of Russia's great czars, one of Russia's great sort of, kings in a sense. They were, called in Russia going back hundreds of years. The guys who initially went and gal went and expanded Russia, and basically ate up Russia's, like Peter the Great. I believe, I don't know a lot about the history, but Peter the Great, I believe, established St. Petersburg, like stole the land from Finland or somebody nearby and established St. Petersburg. So Putin, I joke, but it's true. Putin wants to make Russia great again. Putin wants to put Russia on the map as the country. We're equal to America. We're just as important as England and all the rest of you, right? We've got nuclear weapons too. He wants to be remembered as the guy that made Russia great, especially because think about this too. Because these guys, it's really sad, but the Russians are kind of hung up on the whole Soviet Union thing. They think, oh, those were the days. Those were the days that the world respected us. They feared the Russians. And of course, because the Russians were doping all of their athletes, they kept winning all the Olympic games and everything else. So you could argue at least that during that period, right, you had the Bolshoi Ballet. I mean, you had Russia or the Soviet Union at a sort of a cultural height, right? Again, you were threatening to kill these poor kids if they didn't do a good job, but nonetheless, at a cultural height, a military height, economic, not so much. And now what is Russia? Now Russia is, as Ron DeSantis said today, quoting John McCain, a gas station with nukes. So from Putin's, that's a very long way of saying, from Putin's perspective, on his deathbed, he does not want to destroy the world. He does not want to launch the rockets knowing that America will launch the rockets back and all of Russia will be destroyed. He wants to be remembered as the guy, not who destroyed Russia, as the guy who made Russia even bigger, who expanded Russian lands to the neighbors, right? Who made Russia great again. That's why he's not going to launch the missiles on his deathbed, because he's not suicidal. He's egomaniacal in the sense of it's his ego. He wants to be remembered as, he's not a cult leader. He's an ego leader because he wants history to remember him. So that's the difference. So there you go. Prigozhin. Oh, Prigozhin. So Prigozhin, I've so been enjoying this with Prigozhin. So, end of my tea. Yevgeny Prigozhin, I was saying, the Russian billionaire, oligarch, as they call them, corrupt as hell, friend of Putin up until recently, now not so much. Prigozhin several years ago, and now first of all, for the Americans and everybody else out there, you've got to remember that, thank you, Big Gator Girl, or BJ Gator Girl. You've got to remember that Prigozhin is the guy who ran the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian organization that's still in St. Petersburg that ran a lot of the internet campaigns in the 2016 election, especially on Facebook and those kind of things, to try to help steal the American election. That was Prigozhin. It was also the GRU, the Russian military intelligence and those kind of guys. But it also was Prigozhin himself, right? He also established the Wagner Mercenary Group. And the Wagner Mercenary Group are literally mercenaries. Thank you, Hat and Mustache, truthful for that. They are soldiers for hire. They're Russians, but they're basically a private army. And he's been using them particularly in, I think it's Syria, maybe Libya. Libya, I don't recall, but Syria, Mali, and is it the Congo? I forget the DRC. I always forget the other country. But in any case, a couple different African countries, basically, and they're for hire, right? Mali is facing an insurrection by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and they've hired these Russian soldiers to help them. Mind you, these guys are murderers. I mean, they're murderers. These soldiers are murderers and thugs. They're the worst of the worst. I mean, Russian military ain't great to start with, but they're the worst of the worst, these guys. Central African Republic, there you go. That was it. I knew it was a 3-word country, which is why I was thinking DRC. Thank you for that, truthful. So fast forward, the last couple of weeks, he hasn't been doing so well. His forces were initially doing really well from what we know in Ukraine. In principle, possibly fighting even better than the Russian military. We know the Russian military kind of sucks now, right? Prigozhin's people were fighting in Bakhmut. Bakhmut, you will recall, to show you, Bakhmut is the Ukrainian town, more or less here, the tip of my thing here. It's the town where the Russians have been fighting for like almost 9 months now, have still not been able to take this city. It's a city of 60,000 people. It's not big, but the Russians have not been able to take it over. And it's been a lot of Prigozhin's men, but they've been slowly advancing. Well, Prigozhin got too big for his britches, and started basically bragging how much better his forces were than the Ministry of Defense. Because remember, he's a private army. I mean, they're sort of fighting alongside the Russian army, but they're different, right? His a private. Starts bragging about how good. I mean, it's like something out of a Greek myth or something, right? Starts bragging about how good his military is versus the Russian military. Oh, thank you for that. Was it Dankeschön? Thank you, Dankeschön. That's a nice one. I appreciate that. Starts bragging about how good his soldiers are versus the Russian soldiers, starts then criticizing the war effort. And mind you, by criticizing the war effort, he's criticizing Putin. He's talking about the leaders of the war not doing it right and this kind of crap, right? Which implicitly criticizing Putin. Then at New Year's, which is the big holiday for Russians, right? Much more so than, it's funny, the Russians talk about being good Christians. They couldn't care less about Christmas. They care about New Year's. New Year's is their big, because that was the big Soviet holiday, because the Soviets were very anti-Christian. So New Year's comes up, and what does Prigozhin do? He shows up at the front. He risks his life to go see his men at the front of the battle, right? Who was that? Oh, boxing robe. Thank you, Jesse James, for the boxing robe. What does Putin do? Putin does some fake photo op with a bunch of people who were basically plants, we believe, and there's like 11 or 12 of them with a fake backdrop. So Putin's afraid to even show up at the front. Prigozhin goes and shows up. Well, I had said at the time, and it looks like I was right, that Putin was going to start feeling like Prigozhin was kind of like gunning for his job. And I think Putin did get that sense. So what does Putin do? First, Putin cuts off the ammunition to Prigozhin's troops. Now, mind you, most of the troops fighting in Bakhmut, the big battle for the Russians, are Prigozhin's troops, the Wagner mercenary groups. Putin cuts off 80% of the ammunition that's going to these guys. So they're in a, like, mind you, it's a 9-month battle with the Ukrainians. They're killing each other every day. Tons of Russians were already dying anyway. They were just sending these guys. Putin cuts off his ammunition, so his men are stuck there fighting the Ukrainians with no ammunition, right? Die. What happened in the last few weeks, we think, is that Prigozhin also, Putin decided to basically take out Prigozhin once and for all. Not kill him yet, but obviously Prigozhin is a bigger threat to Putin if he's got his own military, right? Let's face it. I mean, you know, if you're a dictator like Putin, you want to have the military. You don't want the other guy to have his own military too. So Putin has been taking Prigozhin's men from all over Ukraine and sending them to Bakhmut to fight that battle in the east that's been really bad where all the Russians are dying. And Prigozhin's been complaining publicly. It looks like Putin just threw all of Prigozhin's men into the meat grinder so that they would die. Basically, so they would die, and killed them so that Prigozhin has very few men left. Well, a lot of Prigozhin's men, you'll remember this, Prigozhin is also the guy who went to the prisons, the Russian prisons, and got a lot of Russian prisoners, right? And basically promised the Russian prisoners that if you serve for 6 months, we will give you a pardon. We'll exonerate you of your crimes. Obviously, he doesn't have the power to do that. Putin allowed him to do it. Well, Putin revoked that privilege a few months ago, too. So now it's the Ministry of Defense that's doing that, not Prigozhin. So, okay, Prigozhin's troops are getting killed because Putin took away their ammunition. Then they're getting killed because Putin has decided, I'm just going to keep throwing more and more of Prigozhin's men into a losing battle to get them killed. And then Prigozhin doesn't have the ability to reinforce the men and get more because Putin took away his main source of getting the men, which was going to Russian prisons. So Prigozhin now goes from being a guy with his own private army to a guy with a dwindling army because they're all getting killed by Putin. Well, the news today is that from Bloomberg, that Prigozhin is preparing to scale back his private army's operations in Ukraine after Russian military chief succeeded in cutting off his supplies and his men. People familiar with the matter said. Now Prigozhin is planning to shift his focus back to Africa. Really interesting, because this was something that some of you had asked this previously, and you had asked me a few weeks ago if it were possible that Prigozhin, it's like watching an episode of Vikings. It really is, though. All the like petty politics, except the Vikings knew how to fight. The Russians don't. Somebody had asked, a couple of you had asked a few weeks ago, if it would be possible for Prigozhin to basically just stop helping, like to say, you know what, I'm taking my men and I'm going back to Africa. And the concern at the time I had, not concern, but meaning if Putin wants Prigozhin to keep fighting, wants his men to keep fighting and Prigozhin takes them and tries to leave, I think Putin would kill him, right? The question becomes whether Putin wants Prigozhin to go back to Africa and do this, or whether Putin's had it with Prigozhin and just wants him gone. I don't know. Now, Prigozhin's forces in Africa, I'll stop the Prigozhin part with this, but I do think it's fascinating because it also shows you how screwed up things are in Russia right now with the military. Prigozhin's forces in Africa have like a stake in gem mines and things, which is crazy. So they're actually they've made like $1 billion with a B that then gets funneled back into the Russian war machine. So, actually the final point to tell you is, at least for the last couple of weeks or the last couple of months, the other battle with Prigozhin was the Russian Ministry of Defense up until now, and now it looks like it may have stopped, but the Russian Ministry of Defense kept trying to take over the town of Vuhledar. And Vuhledar is a little south of Bakhmut. So I'll show you again. So Bakhmut is up here. Vuhledar maybe more or less right here, okay? This is all the front between the Russians and the Ukrainians. This is all Ukraine, of course, but Russian troops are occupying this. So this is right on the front. And according to the Institute for the Study of War, it looked quite possible that the Russian Ministry of Defense kept fighting in Vuhledar and sending more and more Russian troops, even though those troops were getting slaughtered, because they wanted a victory so they could show themselves to be better than Prigozhin and his mercenaries. So it looks like they kept fighting a battle of Russian troops and losing Russian troops, the Russian Ministry of Defense, because of a pissing match, as we say in English, with this guy, because they wanted to show we're better than he is, rather than you're going to Vuhledar and keep fighting because it's necessary to keep fighting, right? Or it's an important strategic area. Thank you, Marcy, for that. It's crazy stuff. Oh, we got a couple super chat questions. First, we've got Julius. Thank you very much, Julius, for that. That's very generous of you. I'm sure you've heard something about this, but the T-55 tanks, yep, almost a World War II level relic tank, are being shipped to Ukraine by Russia to the front. Does this mean Russia's armored core is completely spent? So yeah, we got the news yesterday that Russia is sending T-55 and I think T-54 tanks that are tanks that were developed like at the end, right after World War II, the late 1940s. They didn't go into, from what I read, I believe main operation with the Soviet Army in the late 1950s. The most recent sort of widespread use of these tanks was by the Ethiopian military in the 1990s. So not exactly a ringing whatever of confidence. It was the Ethiopian military, and the Russians are now shipping them to the front in Ukraine. They're very old. They're very old. They're doing it because they need them. Here's the thing. Okay. They're doing it because they don't have enough tanks. Yes. I was seeing some of the military experts say, a lot of people have been making fun of this because they are old tanks. Some of the military experts are saying, yeah, they're old, but they still could do damage, and they still require Ukraine to use weapons to destroy those tanks, and they're weapons that could be used elsewhere. So it still is a problem. But it is indicative of the fact that Russia doesn't have many good tanks left. We do believe that much of Russia's best equipment and its best men were used at the beginning of the war and got destroyed. It is also possible, I read something yesterday, it is possible that Russia is holding back some of its tanks, because think about this. Remember how the U.S. was saying, I forget what it was, but there were some things the U.S. was saying we didn't want to give Ukraine too much of because we've got to keep it ourselves, because what if there's war with China, or what if there's war with Russia ourselves and we've got to fight Russia? Well, Russia should be thinking the same thing. Russia's got to be thinking, look, I've got China to worry about. Yeah, they're my friend, but I don't need China coming in and taking some of my territory. I don't want the Japanese coming and taking the Kuril Islands. I don't want the Americans coming, who knows, and grabbing part of the Russian Far East, grabbing Siberia. I mean, it's ridiculous, but if you're Russian, you might think that. So I would suspect that Russia has probably, hopefully, if they're not stupid, they've kept some of their good weapons aside just in case there's a second war. Right? Or another, or war actually breaks out with NATO, and now and again, it'll be a tank war among other things. People think the air war will win right away, but the tank war. So I suspect it's a mixture of that. And thank you again, Julius. That was very generous of you. Elisa, Two commentators today said Xi, who's the president of China, main concern regarding Ukraine is not Russian victory, but that Putin stays in power to avoid the risk of a pro-democratic successor turning to the West. Oh, that's very interesting. Sure. I mean, it makes sense. I don't know what China's, well, okay, look, we know China and Russia both have been happy to basically form an axis opposite the West, okay, especially opposite the U.S., Europe too, but especially America, right? So they're intentionally sort of a voting bloc or a economic bloc or a military bloc against the U.S. So China doesn't want Putin to lose because Putin's their guy, right? And they don't want Putin to lose as well because China probably likes the fact that the war keeps going because it keeps taxing America, it keeps taxing Europe. In principle, it takes our eye away from Asia and focuses it on Europe, right? Which maybe lets the Chinese do more in Taiwan, they think. I don't think it's true, but maybe. It certainly uses our weapons, which maybe means it'll be harder for us to defend Taiwan, although the military types will tell you that's probably not true because the weapons in Ukraine are weapons for a land war. And, Taiwan is going to probably be much more, one would think, because Taiwan's an island, is going to probably be, airplanes, boats, things like that. Right. So nonetheless, China would love the war to keep going. China wants to keep that relationship going with Russia as a counterpoint, a counterbalance to the West and to the U.S. And I hadn't even thought about that, about a pro-democratic successor. But sure, if it benefits China to have a counterbalance to America and the West, then per se it would hurt China if their counterbalance became a democracy and became basically decided to become part of Europe. Because now imagine Russia joining the EU and the EU, or even better, NATO, right? We had all the other, not all, but a lot of the former Soviet bloc. Well, no, the former Soviet bloc joined us, and many of the former Soviet Union joined NATO. Imagine if we were able to incorporate Russia into NATO and the EU. You got to look on a map where Russia is. Russia is ginormous. It's 11 time zones. I always forget to ask how many time zones. I think it's 11. Hey, Google, how many time zones does Russia have? 11. Good. I got it right. Good. I kept saying 11. Yeah. I mean, imagine like the US mainland has 4 time zones. Okay. From New York to California. Imagine 11 time zones. It's insane how big Russia. Hey, Google, shut up already. Jesus Christ. Imagine how big Russia is. Thank you, Bonnie. So imagine if that massive thing becomes the EU, and now you've got the EU stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It's like, shut up already. Imagine, that's my Google. Imagine if NATO. Hey, Google, what are you talking about? Hey, Google, turn off that alarm. Oh my God. As I'm talking to you, I hear that idiot Google in the background goes, okay, 3 a.m. I turned it on. And I'm like, what? It set an alarm for 3 a.m. on its own. I'm like, that's why I had to stop and stuff. Could you imagine going off at 3 a.m. when you're in bed asleep and something starts going off in the other room? I'm like, oh my God. In any case, so China would freak out if all of a sudden Russia became part of the European Union and Russia became part of NATO. Now, that's far in the future, right? Because all of a sudden, you've now got the EU as a super thing, and you've now got NATO as a super bloc. And by the way, right on China's border. So I hadn't thought about that, but that's very interesting. Now, I'm not convinced that there's any danger of somebody pro-democracy and pro-West taking over Russia anytime soon, right? But, a few more stories here. What have I got here? I'll skip the Blackhawks right now. The last 2. Oh, yeah. Russian. Thank you for the hearts there, Marta. Actually, let me do a quick Patreon pitch and the last 2 stories. So I also have Patreon, which is another way. Oh, actually, let me make sure there wasn't another question further down here. 1 second, quick, guys. Because remember, the super chat questions I always get to first because people are actually paying for them. So as part of my thank you. Okay, I think I got your guys' super chat questions. Thank you, Richard, for the super sticker. Patreon is another great way of supporting my work and supporting other creators you like. Basically, Patreon lets you contribute, $5, $10, $25, whatever, a month to somebody until you turn it off. And it's just a nice way to automatically give them a gift every month. And it's nice from a creator's perspective because we get to see how much money's coming in. So like, I know how much is coming to pay my bills next month. As I said, I do this for free. I've been doing it since the war broke out full time. This is my job. Nobody is paying me except you guys and the money I make from my auctions and other things, for Ukraine. So please do support me if you can. You can find the Patreon link on my YouTube right at the bottom of the screen there, patreon.com/Aravosis. You guys can find it via my profile link, the URL in my profile, or patreon.com/Aravosis. And the neat thing too with Patreon, if you give $5 or more a month to Patreon, you can link it to my Discord, and then you become a VIP Discord member. And thank you, Dankeschön. And among other things, that gives you access to our VIP auction where you have a much smaller group of people you're bidding against for all of the cool Ukrainian stuff. So please do check Patreon out. But I always say, if you've been watching for a few months and you like my work, consider it if you would, please. It's a really a big help. So thank you for that. All right. Last little story, two little stories here. Russian authorities, this is from Institute for the Study of War. Listen to this country is a dictatorship. It just is. Anne-Marie's having a Patreon problem. I don't know. I doubt Syndicate's here tonight that he could help. Anne-Marie, try using the app you download on your phone, or even better, use your computer. You may be doing it on something that isn't liking. You know what I mean? Like, try a different mechanism. If you use a computer, then use your phone. If you use your phone, use a computer. All right. So Institute for the Study of War. Russian authorities are cracking down against bars in urban areas, possibly to crack down against internal dissent among Russian social circles. St. Petersburg outlet Fontanka claimed yesterday that St. Petersburg authorities, Russia, shut down 24 bars as part of a broader investigation into claims of involving minors in antisocial acts, including systematic drinking, drug use, and vagrancy. Institute for the Study of War says this excuse is implausible given normal Russian attitudes towards systematic drinking. I kind of love that they threw that in. Russian Federal Security, FSB, which is the follow-on to the KGB, personnel conducted recent raids against two popular bars and forced patrons to conduct pro-war activities. They're raiding bars because they think the bars are like anti-war bars or something. And they went and arrested people and made them do pro-war activities. I mean, these guys, folks, it's a dictatorship. I mean, it's crazy. And finally, this thing I loved. We talk about this a lot on the show, how the Brits, for whatever reason, Great Britain, United Kingdom, has gotten inside the Russians' head, and the Russians hate the British. But I think it's because they've got this funny notion that somehow they're equal with the British. And I mean, the British are way ahead. I mean, culturally, economically, militarily, kind of depends, although the Brits have nuclear weapons. But culturally, and I mean, militarily, the Brits have got better tanks than the Russians, I'm sure, among other things. So even militarily, in many ways, they're better than the Russians. But the Russians have got this weird love-hate thing with the Brits. Listen to this. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova questioned today whether Prince William, when he visited Poland in the last day, whether Prince William brought ammunition shells containing depleted uranium on his visit to Poland this week. Ms. Zakharova also claims that Prince William's visit to Poland, quote, removes any doubt as to whether Britain and Poland are involved in the conflict. Well, of course, Britain and Poland are involved in the conflict. We're all involved in the conflict. We're giving Ukraine weapons. But I mean, this is, again, the craziness of these people. He's bringing depleted the British prince is bringing depleted uranium in his suitcase, but also like this great discovery she made. Aha! This proves that Britain is involved in the war. We know Britain's involved in the war. They're giving them tanks. What do you mean they're not involved in the war? But this was sort of our fault too. We fell into this weird situation where we became afraid of admitting that we're a party to this war. We are a party to this war. We're not at war, but we're a party. Russia was a party to Vietnam. They gave planes to the North Vietnamese to kill American troops. and we are giving weapons to the Ukrainians to kill the Russians. Yeah. I mean, but it just cracks me up. All right, let's do our Q&A. It went long, but it went long because we did have a lot of questions thrown in with the super chats and stuff too. All right, I can hear my dog. Sasha, a little early for me to be playing with you. The dog is whining from the other room to get me to play with her. So you all, if you would throw your questions via the Q&A link in my TikTok profile, and for the rest of you, use the link at the bottom, the comment box. And of course, if the spirit moves you to do super chat or super stickers, I appreciate it. And for you guys, keep the gifts coming on TikTok. And let's do questions. Oh yeah, they put bounty. That's a good point, Casey. They put bounties on American soldiers in Afghanistan. I believe it was Afghanistan. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Any case. All right, questions. All right. Q&A. We don't know about this. It's a good question. Wah is asking, I heard the Iranian drones were hacked to attack Crimea. Anything about this? We don't know. Thank you, who was that? Big Gator Girl for the hanging lights. So yesterday or the night before, whenever it was, the Ukrainians, we think, because they didn't admit it, attacked. Actually, I don't want to mix this up. Okay. This was the attack on the cruise missiles, because there were two attacks yesterday, right? One was Sevastopol down here. And by the way, somebody yesterday said UAVs. It looks like the Ukrainians used UAVs and is it MVs? Anyway, they used aerial and sea-based. So they used boats and drones to attack Sevastopol. So whoever said aerial wasn't wrong. That was one of the ways they did it. I think we are talking about the attack here. I don't have the name of the town, but it's right here in Crimea, which is the Ukrainian territory the Russians are occupying. Thank you, Spirits here. And where I pointed is a main crossroads. Oh, thank you, Hazel, for the whale. Do the wave. Hazel just did a very nice gift on TikTok. I had to thank her. Thank you, Hazel, for the wave, for the whale. That point I pointed to is a major railroad crossing in Crimea where pretty much anything from the south, you've got to come up and cross that point. So the Ukrainians hit that railroad crossing, we believe, blew up some Russian cruise missiles, which is great, and hopefully also injured the railway crossing, because it then makes it hard to bring up any weapons or troops or anything else from southern Crimea, from Russia and southern Crimea to the troops up there. So supplies and everything else, right? The reports were that the locals reported that they heard drones right before the explosion, and that the drones the motors sounded just like the motors that are on the Iranian drones that have been attacking the Ukrainians. And what some people were saying was either they are Ukrainian drones and they simply have a similar, motor or whatever, or I did see somebody postulate that it's possible the Ukrainians somehow either took over the Russian drones or got the Russian drones and then redid them, rejiggered them or whatever, so that they literally used the Russians' own Iranian drones against them. Who knows? But the fact that you're asking that, like I said, I remember reading people and they were showing the video, the firsthand account saying they sounded just like the Iranian drones, which could have been a coincidence, or it could be that they literally commandeered them, which would be totally cool. Well, actually, yeah, just there for Cyrus is saying they're capturing Russian Iranian drones with new tech. So wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, if they capture the drones and repurpose them, which is something, badass that the would totally be something the Ukrainians would do, right? Let's see here. Not sure, Magical Photo. Magical Photo saying, I sent you a link. Not sure if you got it, on President G saying things will change. Thoughts on what that might be? I don't know. It depends in what context. I'm not sure. I just don't know what that means. I just don't. You know what I mean? Does he mean pieces coming? Does he mean I'm going to give weapons to Russia? I mean, who knows, right? Thank you, Walrack. That's a nice one. I appreciate that. The quarterback Frank thingy. Shooting stars. This is a very nice one. Thank you, Bonnie. That's also one of my favorites because I like the space stuff, but that's a very generous one. I know that. Thank you. How does Russia compensate Prigozhin and Wagner? I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, we do know that Prigozhin, that Wagner has these weird mineral rights or whatever in Africa. I'd be very surprised that Putin lets him just kind of do that without getting his own cut, right? And I've not seen anything that explains outright how, first of all, anything that explains like in detail, literally, how is Wagner group, the Russian mercenaries, working? My dog is roaming around, working side by side with the Russian military. Who do they report to? Like, is it coordinated at all? Like, how is that working? Second of all, how, as you said, how are they getting paid? Where is he getting the money? Is he getting the money? Like, is it literally him doing stuff separately and he gets the money, like we said, from his mineral deals with the Africans and pays his troops? But we do know, for example, that clearly Wagner Group was getting ammunition from the Russian military, because we know the Russian military cut off 80% of the ammunition going to the Russian military, to the Wagner Group. So clearly there's a much greater connection between the two than I think we realized. Off topic, but not off topic considering where we are. RPH is asking about TikTok testifying before Congress today. Thank you, Coeur de Lion, for the whale there. Do the wave for that. I did watch some of the hearings. My nephew watched more of it. He felt that the members of Congress sounded really stupid. Actually, I'll tell you one thing he wrote me. Some congressperson was asking, and he wrote me and goes, "Are these people morons?" Some congressperson asked, oh, he's got even the video here. How can you know the age of a user without using the camera to look at them? So the congressman was saying that you're looking at children and users with our cameras secretly and not telling us on TikTok. And that's how you're figuring out the age of your users on TikTok. And it's like, well, first of all, you could ask them how old they are. Second of all, like, there's lots of ways of finding out people's ages online. He was convinced, the congressman, that the way you figure out people's ages, you secretly turn on the camera on the phone and you look at them and figure out their age for each user individually. He then said, are you using the camera on your phone to gauge the dilation of the pupils and using that data in the algorithm? So look, Congress is reactionary. President Biden is not. You run a real danger of Congress trying to ban, I think the House Republicans probably will ban TikTok. Again, it's owned by China. The Republicans hate China. China to them is communist China. You will always hear the Republicans talk about this. They will say the Communist Party of China. They won't say Beijing. They won't say the Chinese. They won't say China. They'll say the Communist Party of China. So they're really hung up on China. They hate China. Therefore, you could easily see them banning TikTok or trying to. Now, it's not clear what the Senate Democrats would do. My guess is Biden would prefer the threat of a ban to basically force TikTok to either fix itself with its privacy issues or to get the Chinese to just divest, the Chinese company to sell TikTok and divest from it, which the Chinese so far don't want to do. But I think my guess is Biden wants to pretend he wants to ban them, but only to force TikTok to fix it. But there's also issues with freedom of speech in America and whether forcing the sale is even legal. It's not clear that it is, who knows? But anyway, considering I make a living off of TikTok, I'd rather have them not block TikTok. But I will say this too: feel free to go to my YouTube and my Discord. You'll find the links in my Twitter. You'll find the links in my profile, so I don't lose touch with you guys. Daniel, how are you? Daniel O'Neill says from Ireland, the Irish Prime Minister said today that the invasion happened because of a failed policy of appeasement towards Putin. Also said, I read that today. I was a little annoyed actually. Of appeasement towards Putin, also said Putin would be arrested in Ireland. Even neutral, tiny military Ireland is giving Russia is shit. Well done. Yes. The only thing is, I got to say, I got a little annoyed when I read the Irish Prime Minister, because the Irish Prime Minister is talking about how, come on, NATO. Telling Biden, first of all, keep supporting, Ukraine. Telling NATO, you got to give even more weapons, and you got to and we're going to arrest Putin if he comes here. But reiterates, but we're a neutral country and we're militarily neutral. So even though we've got weapons, we're not going to give any to Ukraine. I don't know enough about Ireland, but that's really freaking obnoxious. I mean, I don't know. I just find that really obnoxious. I just have to say, you know, it bothers me because you're literally lecturing everybody else. I mean, I'm glad that he's forceful about it, but you're lecturing everybody else and literally saying you need to give them more weapons, but we're not going to give any because we're neutral. First of all, you're not neutral. If you're literally saying, hey, everybody, give more weapons to Ukraine so they can kill the Russians, you ain't neutral. So I mean, I hear you, Daniel, but I got a little annoyed when I read that. I thought it was a little two-sided in essence. Like Ireland needs to pick a team. Too bad Ireland's never been an aggressor. I got news for you. When you're literally telling Europe to give more weapons to kill Russians, you're an aggressor. Ireland can't play the, we're in the middle. You're not the peacekeepers. You literally told Europe to give more weapons to kill Russians. Ireland isn't the peacekeeper if they're doing that. I got news for you. Yeah, but they must have something. Well, join NATO if you're afraid of your island getting nuked. No, I think it's talking out of both sides of the mouth. It bothered me. Kelly, Xi announced the first Central Asia and China summit in May. He invited leaders of, I saw that, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, reportedly all four accepted. I saw that. I wasn't sure what to make of it, though. I saw that yesterday, yeah. I just don't know what to make of it, so. Sorry, Kef is saying Wagner Group. A little bit of information on the Wagner Group mercenaries. The mercenaries earn roughly 800 Great British pounds per month, I've heard, which I think is $900, $1,000 maybe ish. If he has around 50,000 men, that's roughly 40 million pounds per month just in manpower. Add another 10 million for officers and another 30 million minimum in operating costs. That's nearly $1 billion a year in cost to maintain the mercenary group. Yeah, and supposedly they made $1 billion off of their mineral rights, and who knows I don't even know how the Malian government is paying them. I mean, Mali's like one of the 5 poorest countries in the world. I've been there. It's a fascinating, beautiful country, but very sad. So I don't quite know. Yeah, I don't know how. I just don't know how they're getting paid. No, I'd love to. I need to Google more and look into this to see if we can find out more about why that's happening. Oh my God, yes. Lily is bringing up a wonderful video. I saw this right before the show tonight. She says, did you see the Italian prime minister chewing out one of her senators for asking her to stop aid to Ukraine? It was awesome. Oh my God. She, hold on. I'm going to pull this up a second here. This was the most amazing thing. The Italian prime minister, Giorgia Meloni, I think is her name. There were concerns because her party is kind of far right, and it's in league with some people that are very, anti-Ukraine, not wanting to help. And let me pull this up. So there was concern when she got elected that she might not be great on Ukraine. She's been very strong on Ukraine actually since she took over. I'm going to pull this up really quick and turn my volume down. Hang on. All right. I'm going to, subtitles. Hello, subtitles. Hello. Where are you? On my phone, I'm trying to see the subtitles, but it's not showing them. Come on, subtitles. Where are you? Oh, here it is. Okay. Listen to this. Lastly, I would like to mention the issue of Ukraine to my colleagues. I'm going to read this to you. Honorable so-and-so tells us stop, meaning stop your aid to Ukraine. I think you should tell this to Mr. Putin. And it's weird that you are saying it to us. She speaks more slowly than I do for an Italian. Because it probably betrays a position. She starts very slow. That is to allow the invasion of Ukraine. If we stop, we allow. Things must be called by their name. If we stop, we allow the invasion of Ukraine. Now, she keeps saying condone, actually, is in the Italian, I believe. Now, I am not so hypocritical as to say an invasion for the word peace. And therefore, I believe that we should not allow the invasion of Ukraine because she's saying you're calling for peace, which does not mean we won't work for a peace plan or for a solution to the conflict. But do you really think that someone likes war? Do you think that someone really enjoys being in this framework? No. But clearly the situation is a little more complex than some propaganda dictates because we talk about peace. All right. Can you tell me which are the conditions for opening a negotiating table? Now you kind of have to hear it in Italian. Concretely, we come down for peace because there's a theme that is in this chamber. I repeat. In other words, do you believe, for example, that in order to open any negotiating table, we should or should not ask Russia? It works when you watch it live. Basically, she starts yelling and screaming at these people going, do you want Russia to return their land or not? Do you really think Russia should just be given Ukraine, should be able to chop up Ukraine, should be able to steal their land? Then you're not for peace. You're for invasions. You're against a free people trying to defend their free country against an illegal invasion. And she's building up more and more. Google it. It is the most amazing video you've seen, but you've got to kind of watch it and hear her in Italian as you're reading the subtitles because she's just getting more and more like engaged and enraged. Oh my God. It's a beautiful, like I said, beautiful speech. Anyway, yes. So I did see it. It's wonderful. Yeah. She was just amazing, but Google it. Like I said, Italian Prime Minister, Ukraine speech or peace speech if you want. We'll do a few more questions here. TikTok. Nobody knows. I mean, Nick is saying, do you think Russia has always been a paper dragon? Like during the Cold War, were they always bad and we just never knew because there were no major wars? I mean, who the hell knows? I mean, the thing is, like the Soviet Union, was, who knew, right? We didn't know what their military really had. We didn't know what their economy was really like. I don't know a lot about it. I still feel like in retrospect, we think the Soviet military actually was more powerful than what the Russian military is today. But I really don't know. I don't know. What are the military folks out there? Like, what do they teach you guys? I know we got a lot of military folks that join us. When you study this stuff, do they basically tell you that they still think the Soviets actually were much more powerful than, now, mind you, I mean, the Russian military is smaller. We know that, right? Because the Soviets had 14 other countries that they ate. So this, Russia's smaller than the Soviet Union, but is the military really, really much less? Their Navy was really good during the Cold War. Okay, Daniel says. Okay. Well, we know they tell us, but I do wonder because this was such a shock to us. USSR had 60,000 tanks. Thing here. Yeah, in 1955, the T-55s were new. I'm sure they were. Their tech was more on par back then. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. When the Soviets were in power, the equipment was not so outdated. Okay. They spent more than us some years because now their defense budget's like, isn't their defense budget like 80 billion or something? It's crazy compared to ours. It's like 1/10 of our defense budget. But yeah, including the Warsaw Pact, which actually would not fall. Well, that's the question, right? Whether the Warsaw Pact, the Eastern European countries that were basically held hostage by Russia, whether they would have ever really, worked for Russia. Daniel, brilliant. I hate Irish neutrality. Ireland has a far left problem, which scares the political class. Our military is near useless regarding helping Ukraine. We feel safe wedged between the U.S. and Great Britain. Time invest plus join NATO. Yeah, I mean, I just find it weird that the prime minister was, that you guys are trying to play this. We're neutral. You're not neutral. You're not neutral if you're calling for more NATO weapons to go to Ukraine to kill Russians. And that's why it also annoys me to some degree when we play we're not involved in the war. Of course we're involved in the war. We're not at war with Russia, but we're involved. Why be afraid to say it, Now that's a good point too. Lena points out the losses in the war between the Soviets and Finland were huge. This is true. The Finns say there's like several 100,000 Russian troops still like buried in the snow. I'd say they weren't much stronger, but had more to shove to the fronts. Now that's true too. Whether it's, Russia, they just had more men. And we know they like to just kind of overpower with all the men running at you, like they're doing in Ukraine. Interesting. I don't know. No, our military budget is huge, but it's like 10 times Russia's. Yeah, Russia's military budget is 62 billion. Yeah. Yeah, ours is in the 800 and some billion, Yeah, I know that. I saw that they're upgrading their air defenses around Moscow again because they're getting worried, which is funny. Like, oh well. Ben is correct. In the Cold War, we were more worried about a Soviet land invasion to Europe, correct, across Germany. So NATO flexed its nuclear weapons a lot like what Russia is doing now because the roles are reversed. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, we were worried about a Russian land invasion across West Germany from East Germany. Oh, I see. Right. So we talked about nukes a lot to basically, well, and I would say the flexing is a little different. We flexed in order to say, if you invade conventionally, we will nuke you, because they needed to know that in order to stop a conventional invasion. So it wasn't just, we're having a few too many vodkas and talking about nuking you. You know what I mean? There's a legitimate reason why we were saying it back then. It's not clear to me what their legitimate reason is for Russia saying it now. Well, exactly. They're attacking in meat waves. No, that's what they're doing in Bakhmut. Yeah, and they were, not doing too well. All right, guys. I'm going to do a wrap up. I think it's 7:15. We've done well. I'm tired. But tomorrow, today's Thursday, so tomorrow we've got another show, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. Remember, since it's already Thursday, Saturday morning we have our weekly coffee talk, or coffee talk as I call it. I will be doing a hangout with the paid subscribers on TikTok at 10 a.m. Eastern Time US, and the paid subscribers on Discord. We see a jingle. We sort of coordinate. It worked fine last time. I coordinated using both of my machines here, and it's just a hangout, 10 a.m. Eastern Time US. That's New York City time, Saturday morning. And we just hang out and talk. It's fun. It's fun. It's just sort of a nice hangout. I'm on video and you guys are typing, and usually we go for about an hour. I mean, I promise half hour, but we usually go an hour anyway. And we talk politics, but we also just talk fun stuff. It's just sort of a thing to do to thank the folks who are the paid folks helping pay my bills. So it's the paid TikTok subscribers. You know who you are. You'll find it on TikTok. And for you guys, if you're a paid Patreon, $5 and up, make sure you connect it to Discord, and then go to Discord. You'll see in the top left corner, you look for the $5 a month video chat thing. That's the one where we'll be Saturday morning at 10 a.m. All right, guys. All right. I'll do a quick wrap up of the news we covered today and then call it quits here. It's day 392 of Putin's 10-day special military operation. Ron DeSantis flip-flopped again on Ukraine, but in a good way. He came out today and criticized Russia's invasion, said Ukraine should get all of their land back. Putin's a war criminal and should be arrested. And we had a very long discussion on why I think that's very significant, because it suggests that the Republican, that basically DeSantis, read the tea leaves, or, stuck his finger in the air and realized that you get more Republican votes being strong against Russia and strong for Ukraine than the opposite. European Union leaders have endorsed a plan to jointly procure 1 million rounds of artillery ammunition for Ukraine over the next year. Slovakia today transferred 4 of the 13 MiG-29 fighter jets it pledged to Ukraine. Ukraine has submitted a request for trilateral negotiations between Kyiv, Washington, and Helsinki to discuss the transfer of F-18 Hornet fighter jets. Finland has pledged 3 more Leopard 2 tanks from its arsenal to Ukraine. Spain's Leopard 2s are going to be arriving next week, at least some of them, the first 6 of 10. Russia threatened to bomb The Hague in exchange for the arrest warrant issued against Putin. They're not going to. Hungarian officials said Budapest will not arrest Putin if he visits. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the powerful founder of the mercenary group Wagner, looks like he's going to try to pull up shop in Ukraine and just leave entirely and go back to Africa with his operation, because his troops have been so decimated by the Russian Ministry of Defense because Putin's trying to get rid of him. The Dictatorship Watch, Russian authorities are cracking down against bars in urban areas, possibly to crack down against internal dissent. And the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman accused Prince William of bringing depleted uranium shells with him to Poland because she's crazy. All right, guys. That is it for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the gifts. You guys were very generous today. I appreciate it. That's it. I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time US on TikTok, YouTube, and the rest of you, Twitch, et cetera, et cetera. And join me tomorrow. And then, like I said, Saturday morning will be the coffee talk. Thank you for that. Who is that? Hazel. Saturday mornings for the paid subscribers, just a little hangout. Let me skip Discord today. I'm feeling really tired. It's already 7:20 as well. Let's skip Discord. If we finish on time tomorrow, I'll go Discord afterwards. We did Discord last night for a while. So I'll skip Discord tonight because I'm feeling a little tired. And we'll try to do it tomorrow if we finish on time. All right, guys. So thank you all so much. And have a good night. And I will see you all tomorrow. Good night, Sweden. Go to bed. All right. See you guys.